Those Who Do the Podcast will begin after this short message.
Hey, creepy people. This is P&W Haunts and Homicides. I'm Caitlin.
And I'm Cassie.
Together, we explore stories of the paranormal and true crime throughout the Pacific Northwest. For each episode, we do a tarot reading to help us gain some insight on the topic as we share the facts of the case and our interpretations. You can find our episodes featuring true stories from infamous cases such as the misdeeds of Boeing, as well as lesser-known true crime cases like the murders in Tunnel 13.
As well as our spooky stories from Pike Place and Raven's Manor on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you'd like to listen. Have a creepy-ass day.
Contact Those Who Do Podcast by emailing thosewhodopodcast@gmail.com. Welcome to another episode of Those Who Do the Podcast. With you, as always, I'm Zach. Today we have a lot to cover. We easily have our most unique guest to date, not to hurt anybody else's feelings, but you're going to be hard-pressed to have a life story as interesting as our guest today. Today, we have Naomi Swartzentruber, who, I tell you what, she was born into the Amish community and then went on to live some adventures. So many adventures that she wrote a book called The Amazing Adventures of an Amish Stripper. And you can go out and get that at Amazon. And I strongly recommend it because her story is enthralling. So I want to get right into it because this is probably an 8-hour story and we've only got a limited amount of time. So Naomi, thank you so much for joining us today on Those Who Do.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
So am I. I've been looking forward to this. We've been through both of our misfortunes. We've had to reschedule this a couple times. So I'm glad that we're finally getting to sit down and do this today. We have a little bit in common in that you're originally from Iowa, right?
I'm originally from Michigan, but my family has moved. Yeah, my family, most of them live there now.
Okay.
And I grew up in Michigan and I still have 3 brothers and 1 sister here. And I just bought a place here as well. So.
Oh, great. So you grew up your younger years when you're a child were in Michigan then, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So I always like to start out, and your story really is no different in that a lot of your formative time is when you're a child. So tell us about little 5-year-old Naomi. What was life like as a 5-year-old?
I would wake up at 5:30 in the morning to set the table, and I would have to go feed the chickens in the morning. I would gather the eggs at noon after lunch, but I would feed the chickens and give them water. And then my sisters, they would be done with milking the cows. So they would come in and it was just a lot of chores, even at 5. And I would fill the wood box, and sure, I would play with my brothers and sisters. I had 7 brothers and 4 sisters. Even at that young age, I had lots of chores to do. And I actually enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy getting up at 5 in the morning, but helping on the farm and being with my family, it was pretty awesome.
Now, did you have set chores that were always yours, or did the chores kind of rotate amongst all the kids?
Well, we all had chores, but I had a lot of set chores. Like I would have to fill the wood box. I would have to set the table and feed the chickens and gather the eggs. And I would also help with washing the dishes and entertaining my younger siblings. So, and as I got older, obviously the chores changed. Right. And I got to start milking cows when I was 8. I always enjoyed that. And I really enjoyed life on the farm. And even though I was a girl, and typically the girls are in the house helping mom, like not making the clothes when we're that young, but as we get older, mom teaches us how to sew our clothes and stuff like that. But working in the garden and doing the housework and canning all of our food and all that stuff was typically the women's job. But I loved being outdoors. So I was outdoors in the fields and in the barn every chance I got. And mom would often send one of my sisters out or a little brother to go fight me because I was supposed to be inside doing something, and I was outside doing chores in the barn or playing in the barn when I was supposed to be working in the house.
Now, was that frowned upon, or was it okay as long as you had your other chores done?
Sometimes it was frowned upon, but as long as I was not just playing, it was not so frowned upon. Most of the time I was actually working outside in the fields or in the barn with my brothers and my dad. I don't know. I just still today, I love being outdoors. Like, it's so nice and fun. Not that I don't like doing house chores. It's not my favorite. It's just more fun to be outside.
I mean, that makes sense. I would much rather be outside mowing than vacuuming. So I get it.
Right.
How much time was allowed during the day for play, for just being a kid?
Oh my goodness. I mean, I always say I didn't have a lot of time to play, but sure, we got to play some. But once I was like in school, which started at 6, especially then, it didn't seem like there was hardly any time to play because we all had to help keep the house in order and doing the chores and making sure everyone got to bed in time. And then in the mornings, I had to pack school lunches for all of us kids. And it just, I don't know. I guess once you're like 8 to 10, you don't really get to have much playtime at all. You're just helping. And I know that probably sounds and seems so unreal to most non-Amish people, but in the Amish, it's just how it is. It's just normal.
Sure.
And I didn't really mind it. I didn't know any better or different. So that's just how it was. Yes. 7 boys and 5 girls, and I was child number 4.
Oh, wow. Wow. So the overall community, how many people were in your Amish community?
That's a really good question. I'm really not sure. There's a huge community here. And I recently talked to one of my aunts, and she was telling me how many families have moved out already. And there was a huge number. I don't remember the exact number. I was like, how do you even know that? Like, it blew my mind. I couldn't believe that she knew all that. But I don't remember the exact number, but it was pretty big. But it's a big number of families that are still here.
So when you say that you went to school, was it an Amish only school?
Yes, it was a 1-room schoolhouse, and we had generally one teacher and between 20 and 30 students. If there were closer to 30 students, the teacher would have a helper at least a couple days a week. And we only went to 8th grade. We don't have preschool or kindergarten. We just start in 1st grade when we're 6. And we're out. I was out of school. I turned 14 in May, but school year ends for the Amish in April, the end of April. So I was 13 when I was out of school.
That's wow.
Yeah.
So what as far as coursework, what were the focuses in Amish school?
We had reading, writing, spelling, and math. And in school, in 2nd grade, we also had to start learning how to speak English and write and stuff like that. I did not like to speak English when I was little. I thought it was awful. It was really hard. But my aunt, she would smack us with a yardstick in school. She was our teacher when I was in 2nd grade. And she would make us pronounce the words like mother and father. She'd be like, stick your tongue out and say mother. And I'm like, oh, don't hit me again. Like, I'll say it right, I promise. Like, it was so scary. But eventually, now I like speaking English. But also in 5th grade, we had to learn how to read, write, and spell German because all of the Amish prayer books and Bibles, and I don't know about all the Amish, but in my community and the Swartzentruber Amish, which is how I grew up, all of our prayer books and Bibles were in German. But the language is Pennsylvania Dutch. So I already knew how to read it and stuff like that, but writing and spelling, which was pretty fun and awesome.
How close is Pennsylvania Dutch to German? Is it a big leap or no?
Some of it, but there's a lot of similarities. Like and I don't know if it's because I grew up and I was used to hearing it in church and from reading the books in the Bible, I can understand a lot of the German. It is actually different, but I can, like, my fiance's sister lives in Germany. She married a guy from Germany, and when they come visit, like, we can have conversations in German. I can't understand all of the words, and he can't understand all of them either, but it's pretty close.
So you can get there. It just sometimes takes a little work on both your
Right.
parts. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. But I could totally go to Germany and be okay with the way getting by and with the Amish language.
Have you ever been? Have you ever been to Germany?
I've never been. Not yet, but one day.
Put it on your list.
Hopefully soon. It's definitely on there. Yep.
So you said, eighth grade, right, is where school ends for you. So you get your schooling, you learn how to read and write and everything that you're going to need to move forward, and you finish school. Now what is expected of you?
Once we get out of school, we go to work on the farm. Like, we learn how to make clothes. And that's when I already knew a little bit. I could make handkerchiefs and diapers and stuff even before I was out of school. But that's like when my mom would teach, she taught me how to make dresses. And a bummer, because I had two older sisters. So she already taught them how to sew. It was easier for me to go like make lunch and work in the garden. I did make a couple dresses, but that's one thing I wish I would have learned how to do better is sewing, because I didn't get to learn a lot of that before I left.
So how did your chores change then? Was it mostly, I guess, because you said your chores changed as you got older. What if you weren't sewing as much, what other things were you doing? I
was like canning fruits and vegetables and meats. Like, we had to can everything. So it just, I don't know, it's more the role kind of like adults. And I also, so after I was out of school, because I did have two older sisters, the Amish, for example, my niece across the street recently had a baby. And when the Amish have babies, they call it a mod, but it's actually a maid. And it's this girl that's out of school that's not yet married. And once I was 15, I often went and was the mod for someone. And even if they didn't have a baby, like my aunts and uncles often needed help because their kids weren't as old as I was. And my dad was the oldest of the family. So his younger siblings that were married, they often needed help. So I often went and helped them. And I did like all kinds of stuff, like everything that adults do pretty much, if that makes sense. I mean, not all the heavy work, but I would do a lot of things. So
what type of tasks were expected of you when you went and did the mod work?
I would take care of the kids. I did a lot of gardening. I even worked on the farms. For my one aunt and uncle, I often was out in the fields. I even plowed the fields sometimes. I would help put up the hay and just farm work. And also I would can the food. I would help can peaches and pears in the summer.
So basically kind of just a utility person, like a jack of all trades. Come help where we need help, right?
Exactly. Whatever needed to be done, we would do it.
How long did you do the mod work? How long were you kind of, I guess, not rented out, but borrowed out to your other family members?
It would generally be 4 to 6 weeks. I think the longest it was 8 weeks. One summer I was at my aunt and uncle's house. It was interesting because my uncle had huge anxiety problems. And he was very sometimes I had to walk on eggshells, but I knew I was okay. Like he never hurt anyone. He just would freak out sometimes, and It was stressful.
That brings up an interesting point. How is mental health treated in the Amish community?
They seek help through the elders sometimes. And if they can't resolve it like that, they actually do go to the doctors, and some of them are on meds, especially he never did get on meds. I don't know. Somehow he resolved it. I've ran into him, my uncle, several times since I've left, and he's like a completely different man now. Oh. So I don't know if it was the fact that he lived on such a huge farm. He was one of my dad's younger siblings, and he took over my grandpa's farm, and he didn't have any boys or any kids old enough to work on the farm yet. And he had this massive farm. It was over 200 acres, and it's all farmed with horses. And I think that's probably what caused all of his stress and anxiety, because now he's like calm and amazing. So
do the I know the community is very close knit and built around a work ethic. Do the Amish retire?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
They absolutely do retire. For example, my dad, he retired, gosh, I don't know how many years ago, quite a long time ago. And even when he retired, like he sold his farm, so he doesn't do the farm work, but now he makes buggies, and he started making buggies here in Michigan, and he lives in Iowa now, my mom and dad, and he still makes buggies.
Oh, wow.
So he's retired, but he still makes buggies. And that's what my grandpa did, the same thing. And even when they retire, they still, I don't know if it's just in their ethics or just how it is in the Amish, like they just work, but not as hard as they used to when they were younger.
Well, and it sounds like they kind of are able then to pick something that they enjoy doing rather than
100%.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and even like my mom, she makes clothes for other Amish that have a big family and they need help. So that's what she does. But I just got a letter from her recently, and she's like, some days are slower than others, but I'm still doing, sewing when I can. So it's pretty cool.
So now you said that your parents moved to Iowa. Are they down in the southwestern part of Iowa, or where
they are? I don't know if it's west. They're in the southern part, like where the Missouri and by the 69. I don't know.
Is it kind of down,
where it all goes?
Like down by Lamoni, maybe?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
down by there.
Yeah,
yep.
I did a little bit of research. There's not a ton of information on the internet, but I had read that that's the only sect of Swartzentruber Amish in Iowa, and I was like, I bet it's her family.
Yep, that's where they are. Yeah. That's where they are.
What brought them to Iowa? What made them decide to leave Michigan and come to Iowa?
Well, back in the day when I was still Amish, it was, I don't know, we used to be pretty bad teenagers. Like, I don't know, it was crazy back then. But the kids in this community here, they were pretty bad. Like, they would go into my dad had a sawmill here, and they would throw the harnesses in the water, and they would destroy his engine. And they were pretty mean. And my mom and dad and some other of my aunts and uncles and a whole bunch of Amish, they were like fed up, and they moved to Iowa thinking they were going to move away from their problems. But, your problems generally follow you unless you change. And I'm not saying that it was my parents, because I think my parents are pretty awesome. I don't know why they would always pick on, my last name is Swartzentruber too, but I don't know why they would always pick on us. And for example, one night, this is so silly, but so my dad's sawmill, they would always destroy the engine or the harnesses for the horses. And one of the non-Amish neighbors was an ex-cop, and he's like, that's enough, because the Amish cannot call the cop. Like, for stuff like that, they can't call the cops to protect themselves. So this guy's like, told my dad, he's like, I'm going to sit by the sawmill inside the building, and if they come, I'm going to hold him, and I'm going to call the cops. And my dad's like, whatever, okay. And he did, and sure enough, they came. And oh my gosh, they destroyed some of the stuff. So he handcuffs them, and he holds them, and the cops come. But guess who got in trouble? My parents got in trouble with the bishop, because they had this non-Amish man trying to guard their farm. So it was just crazy. Like, I don't know, the Amish politics are very interesting.
Yeah, I've always been kind of fascinated by how insulated the community is, and the fact that it's kind of we'll take care of it ourselves. But it didn't sound like they were taking care of it very well.
No, they weren't. And even now, like clockwork, every Saturday and Sunday night, like I hear the buggies going by, and all of a sudden, even before I hear the buggies, you just hear this boom, 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 like this loud bass music coming down the road. And They don't always go across the street to my niece's house, but what they'll do is they'll go and they call it giving the Amish music, because I guess my niece and her husband, they used to like music a lot, as I did when I was Amish. But they go in there with their buggies and they have loud music blasting, they're drinking beer, and they sit right in front of the porch and they're hoping the man will come to try to chase them away. But this guy, my niece's husband, never does. But they still come over here. But at least now I hear that even though they party a lot, they're not destroying the property like they used to back then. Thank goodness, because that's not good for anyone.
Right.
Really.
Right. So now if it's known, if it's well known that they're partying and drinking and doing, are they doing Rumspringa? Is that why they're left alone, or no?
They are not doing Rumspringa. My community did not do that. And
okay.
I sometimes think that they wouldn't be so wild, or maybe they would be, but I don't know. They are just so strict that it drives them to rebel and party a lot.
Sure.
But it seems like once they get married, they settle down and they just party until they get married. Even sometimes once they get baptized at 18, some of them settle down, because once they get baptized and they have music and they're drinking and the church and the bishop finds out, then they'll be in trouble and they'll be shunned for a period of time.
Okay, so that's the differentiation, is since they haven't been baptized yet, the community isn't coming down on them for their behavior, and then once they are, they're held more accountable.
Right. I mean, they try, but it's these days the kids, even though sometimes the parents are like, okay, you can't go to the singing for this many Sundays, because after church every other Sunday, there's a singing where the kids that are 16 and a half and older and not yet married, they go and they sing for 2 hours. And their punishment is supposed to be they can't go to that. But 9 out of 10 times they go anyway. They're like, well, I'm going. And the parents can't stop them. So they just go and do it. So it's like the parents try to not let them do these things, but there's not, I don't know. The kids are not like back then when I was still here. I'd be like, okay, I guess I can't go. And I wouldn't go because I wouldn't dare to try to walk out of the house if my mom and dad were in there trying to keep me. I knew better. I couldn't. I don't know.
It's weird how much teen behavior parallels even in different communities. You know, I mean, clearly that's what everyone's saying in the English communities is these kids, they don't listen anymore. They're worse than we were, and it's apparently the same in the Amish community. So
100%.
Must be something in the water, or the air, or something. I don't know. I was lucky. Our two oldest are now 27 and 24, and they were good kids. They never got in trouble. My daughters are gonna. Oh man, my daughters are gonna burn this place to the ground. It's gonna be terrible. It's gonna be so bad.
Oh man,
I don't know, but you know, what do you do?
I know,
right? So that takes you up. So you're out of school. You've done the mod. Now, at what point do you start to feel like maybe living as English might be something you want to do?
So it actually started before the mod thing, but I never planned on it completely. I thought about it. When I was 13, we got new neighbors and they had a little girl. They were not Amish. And she was super fascinated by the Amish, and she often came over, even though my parents weren't happy about it. They tolerated her. And one thing led to another. They would buy baked goods and vegetables from us, and we were at their house a lot more. They were at our house a lot. And I would see, I'm like, wow, she has a bicycle. She's wearing these little shorts. She has her nails painted. She's watching TV on the phone with her friends, landline back then. But I was like, wow, that's so cool. Like, I want to be English, but I didn't dare. At that point, I was like, okay, I will burn in hell if I do, and I definitely won't. I just wish I could do all these things. And when I was 15, I went with my brothers to go ice skating at my aunt and uncle's, and they were gone, but we were going to go skating with the kids. And the windows were down, the curtains were down, but there, when the curtains are down, you just walk in anyway. Like, the doors aren't locked. The Amish, they just go in. So I walk in and there's a radio, like a boombox, like one of those big radios that has like C or D cell batteries. I didn't. I just knew it was a radio. I didn't know about the batteries back then.
Right. My
cousin like grabs it and puts it under his jacket, and he runs to his mom and dad's bedroom. And I was furious. I couldn't believe they had a radio. I was like, this is so horrible. And they acted like nothing happened. They're like, oh yeah, tell your brother's to unhitch the horse and come in. But we never went ice skating. And I couldn't wait to go home and tell my mom and dad. And I even went downstairs to search for the radio because I was really upset that they had a radio. I couldn't find it. I don't know what they did with it, but thankfully my uncle was working for us at the time, and I told him first, and he's like, well, if you don't tattle on your cousins, I won't tattle when you get your first radio. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, sometimes the Amish kids, they have radios, but we don't tell the parents. And I was like, really? And 2 weeks later, our cousin brought a radio over. And that's when it all started. And at that point, still, I didn't really plan on running away. For certain, I just fantasized about it. But I loved music. Like, that's all I could think about. And I enjoyed letting my hair down when my parents were gone, and I would dance. And it was just, I don't know. I even got English clothes at a yard sale that I would wear when my parents were gone. And I started sneaking out after I was 16 with non-Amish boys. And one night I got caught. And it was just after I was 17. And, well, I snuck out, and my parents, because they weren't sleeping yet, but it was time to meet up. And I was like, I have to go. Like, I can't be late. I don't want to miss my Sunday night date. And after that, I was like, because my parents, they thought I was running away, and I lied to them. I was like, I couldn't sleep. I just went jogging. They didn't believe me. But after that, I was like, I know for sure I want to keep having fun the rest of my life, but I don't want to sneak or be in trouble for listening to music.
Right.
That's when I decided that I really do want to run away. Like, it's not just a fantasy anymore. Like, this is serious. I really do want to run away. And I didn't know how. I knew I wanted to get a job. I knew I didn't want to be Amish. And one morning I was picking strawberries, and this guy that used to deliver logs to my dad's farm came, and I was in the garden picking strawberries by myself, and he was talking to me, and I was like, oh, I could live with him. And I just blurted it out. I was like, I want to live with you. I want to run away. And he's like, you can't do that. You're crazy. Your parents will hate me. And I was like, I might be crazy, and they'll probably definitely hate you, but I really do want to run away. And he's like, okay. And a week later, he came back, and I was picking strawberries again. And he said that I could live with his mom if I ran away. I was like, thank goodness. I was so excited. But then I didn't know when. But a week after that, I was like, if I don't do it, I'll never do it. So I ran while my parents and everyone was milking the cows. I had a birth certificate. I knew I had to get that to get an ID.
Right.
So I said I had to go to the outhouse, and I went in the house, and I stole my birth certificate from my dad's desk, and I hid it in my drawer upstairs. And then I ran away at night.
Wow.
It was crazy. It was nerve-wracking.
What was the music that hooked you? What were you listening to?
Country music. I love Joe Diffie, John Michael Montgomery, George Strait, Alan Jackson, Hank Williams Jr., like all that, like 80s and 90s country, Reba McEntire, the Tanya Tucker, all like the good old country songs. Ugh, I still love it.
But Garth Brooks?
Oh, I love Garth Brooks. Yes. Toby Keith.
One of the best concerts I've ever been to in my life. I saw Garth Brooks in Minneapolis, and it changed my life. It was amazing. It's so good.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I'm not a country guy. Like I'm a rock and roll guy, and Garth Brooks, I have a special place in my heart for him. I remember when I was a kid, some of the first cassette tapes I had were Garth Brooks, and he just always had me hooked. So when he went on his last tour, I fought to get tickets, and it was well worth it. Well worth it. So
that's awesome.
If you ever get the chance, you got to do it. So country music is what stole you from the Amish community.
Yeah, I know, right?
And so when you snuck out, did you meet him somewhere on a road and jump in a Camaro with him or something, or what did you do?
Oh, when I ran away, finally?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I wish it would have been that easy. Wish I could have just gone and like jumped into a Camaro. I love Camaros one day. But No, it wasn't quite that easy. My sisters and I, we went to the neighbors who had the little girl to bring them baked goods on a Friday night. And I was like, oh, here's my chance. And they were outside and I went inside and I didn't even know about answering machines, but they didn't answer. And I did not know this man had a wife and a child. I didn't care. I just wanted to run away from the Amish. And I called, there was no answer. And I guess I was like cursing on an Amish and stuff. And they realized who it was. And they're like, oh, wants to run away. So they came to our farm to see that night at like 9:00. They roll in. And I was like, oh my goodness, they're here to spoil my plan. And I was so upset. But anyway, thank goodness his wife was there and everyone knew him. We'll call him Kevin because that's his name in my book. And we'll call his wife Christine because that's her name. And everyone went to Kevin's side of the truck. And I went to Christine and I was like, I'm running away at midnight. Please pick me up at this crossroads. And it's just like a 1/4 mile up the road. And I whispered, I'm like, please don't tell anyone. She's like, okay, I won't. And after they finally left, like my family wasn't going to sleep and it's 11:30 and I was nervous. I tiptoed up to the attic as quietly as I could to get my bag, a little plastic grocery bag that I had put my English clothes and my wallet was $60, which I thought was a lot of money.
Oh, wow.
And I came down and my sister met me at my doorway in the hall. And she's like, are you running away? And I was like, no, absolutely not. I was like, I couldn't sleep. I just wanted to go see if there was a book I could read because we would hide romance novels in our attic along with our camera and our radio and our English clothes. But she didn't believe me. She's like, I know you're running away. And then Kevin shows up with his truck at the crossroad. And she's like, there he is. I know you're running away. And I was lying. And I'm like, please go to sleep. And she's like, I will not sleep because I know you're running away and our family will be too upset. I can't let you run away. And she would stand next to my bed and try to tell me I can't do this. And I'm like, go to bed. Like, I'm tired. I'm trying to sleep. And finally, I just kept pretending that I was sleeping. And eventually she gave up. She went into her room and I was like listening to her breathing. And I was like, I think she's actually sleeping. And I slowly got out of my bed and I went and crawled on my knees into the hall next to her door. And I was like, she's sleeping. And I went to my window, which had a screen because we don't have air conditioners. It's July in Michigan. And I pushed the screen to the side and I climbed on the roof and I jumped. I hung my feet off the roof. It was like 10 to 12 feet and I ran into the darkness.
Wow.
And they were not there anymore. So I was like,
no.
I was like, what do I do? Like, I just jumped off the roof. I can't get back in the house. And they're not there to, like, I don't know what to do. And I finally stopped and I was like, okay, what can I do? I was like, I don't want to go back. So I waited in a granary where we used to live on the farm where I'm actually at right now, a 1/4 mile up the road, because I'm staying in the farmhouse where I was when I was a little Amish girl now, wow, while our place is being worked on. But anyway, I waited in this granary, and at 5:30 in the morning, I hear my dad and my brothers, they're out like doing chores and calling the cows. And I was like, they could come look for me. Like, I am not safe here. And I took one look at the farm and I ran across the driveway on top of the farm and I went through the woods and I hid in the woods until I saw a light come on in a house that was not Amish. And I didn't know these people, but I knocked on the door and I was like, can I use your phone? It's 8:00 in the morning at this time. And they were so confused, but they were like, sure. And I called Kevin and Christine and told them to meet me at a new spot now because the Amish are going up and down these roads with their horse and buggies because they're busy even before the sun comes up.
Right.
So I ran through another woods. It was crazy, like 1/2 mile. And I was hiding in the woods. And I didn't know that Kevin had a car or that Christine had a car. So I'm listening for his truck that was really loud. And I'm like, why are they not coming? There's just buggies going all the time. And finally I knocked on this guy's house that lived on the corner and asked to use his phone. He's like, sure. And then Kevin and Christine were already back home. They're like, where are you? Like, why didn't you come out? And I'm like, I was waiting for your truck. And they're like, oh, we're in the red car. And I was like, what? I didn't know you had a car. So they're like, okay, stay put in this guy's house. Do not leave. And we're going to pull in the driveway and we're going to pick you up. So that's like 11 o'clock the next morning. So I was finally, when we got to their house, which was like 15 miles away, I was like, okay, I can breathe. I'm like free finally. Like, I don't know. It was so hard.
Did you leave a note or anything?
Yes,
Okay.
I did leave a note that I did not want to be Amish and that I ran away and that I was sorry. But my family didn't believe that I ran away for some reason. They thought I was maybe kidnapped or something.
Oh.
And then they thought they had a feeling that Kevin was involved and that I was with him. And my dad started calling him 3 weeks after I left. My dad started calling Kevin's house. And Kevin's like, I don't know where she is. Because I was like, don't tell him that I'm here and at your mom's house. And my dad was like, well, then I'm calling the cops because I need to know where my daughter is. And I need to know that she's safe.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad did call the cops. And Kevin was like, oh, okay, she's at my mom's house. And when the cops called Kevin told him where I was. And I had to go over there. And it was terrifying. I don't know, I was shaking like a leaf on a tree. Like, I have to talk to the cops. But they just wanted to see that I was okay.
Right.
And then they made me write a letter to my parents to give them my address. They said they were also going to give it to him, but just I had to write him to let him know that I was okay and where I was. And man, after that, I did not like staying with his mom. She was old and had dialysis 3 times a week. So she needed help. That's why I could stay there. But I didn't like staying there because it was down this dirt road in an old farmhouse that was cluttered, and I was so lonely, and I was scared that my parents would show up. And sure enough, a couple days when I came back with her, there were bucky tracks there. But thankfully, I was never there when they got there. I was like, it's like, that's not fun.
So would they, do you think if you would have been there, they would have just grabbed you up and drug you back? Or how do you think they would have handled it?
They wouldn't have grabbed me up, but they would have. I don't know that I would have been strong enough because I was raised to be obedient.
Sure.
I felt like if I saw them that I would feel really bad and that they would probably be able to talk me into coming back.
Right. Because, I mean, you still loved your family. You just didn't want to be Amish. Yeah.
I loved my family and I missed them so much and I was so lonely, and I almost did go back when I first left because I was used to working from 5 o'clock in the morning until the sun went down. And all of a sudden I'm all alone. I had a big family I was used to being around, and now I'm alone and have nothing to do. It was kind of terrifying at first and awful.
So what was your next step then?
So my next step was I wanted to get a job, but Kevin and Christine were like, you need to learn the ways of the English, if they call it Amish. We call it the non-Amish English.
Sure.
If you're going to be living in this world. And they supported me financially until I was 18, even though that was really hard for me because I wanted to get a job so bad. But eventually, after a couple of months, they said, since I was having a hard time with just being bored at his mom's house, they restored their storage room and made it livable. So I moved in with them.
Oh, okay.
And the day I turned 18 on a Monday, and we had a birthday party for me on Sunday, which was my first birthday party. It was amazing. And the day after that, Christine took me to get my driving permit, and we put applications in, and I got hired at Burger King.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
A couple months after that, I moved to Minnesota with my first boyfriend, and we started dating in January of that year, and that was August by the time we moved to Minnesota. And I worked at a factory out there, and I wasn't making much money. And then I worked at IBM, and then he broke up with me, my boyfriend. My first boyfriend, I was so heartbroken. It was awful. And I was worried about how I was going to support myself. And my best friend, who was a girl, was like, you could always be a dancer. There's lots of ways to make money. And I was like, what? I could never do that. Lo and behold, she takes me out on that Friday night and didn't tell me where we were going. And before I knew it, we were in this parking lot with a pole. It was a silhouette of women. And I was like, why are we here? I was terrified. But yeah, there I was.
Was she a dancer or she was just wanted it for you?
No, she was a dancer.
Okay.
She was ex-Amish as well, and she was a dancer in Detroit for a while.
Okay. Ooh, that's a rough place to be a dancer.
Yeah, I know. She definitely had rough times there.
I mean, that's a rough place to be a librarian. I mean, it's a rough place across the board. Holy cow. So did you know her from Michigan or did you meet her after you moved to Minnesota? Those Who Do the Podcast will begin after this short message.
Hey, it's good old boy Mike.
This is good old boy Dave.
From Sips, Suds, and Smokes. Sips, Suds, and Smokes covers wine, tea, coffee, distilled spirits, whiskey, scotch, beer, cigars.
People whose first name starts with Q.
Bad fake British accents.
And we always take time to make fun of the people of Alabama.
Banned once again.
It's a 1 hour episode that's mildly entertaining for about 22 minutes.
I think mildly would be a vast improvement.
Well, we do have the only beer show with the Holy Man. We talk about these products and rate them with our unique rating system, like our Suds 5 rating. Do you really have something better to do with your life for an hour than actually listen to this show?
Well, don't make them think about it.
Well, join us on this radio station, podcast network, or via our Android app.
So did you know her from Michigan or did you meet her after you moved to Minnesota?
Her and her family, they moved to the South District. And I don't remember how old I was when they moved there. So I knew of her when she was Amish, but then she ran away in Michigan and somehow she ended up in Minnesota. And then somehow I ended up in Minnesota. And because of my boyfriend at the time when I moved there, he was really good friends with her and her husband.
Oh, okay.
So her and I just clicked. Our birthdays are a day apart and we are still best friends. And I know on my social media, people get mad. They're like, she wasn't a friend if she took you to a strip club. I'm like, honestly, she was trying to help me and she did. And I have no regrets. Like, sure, there were hard times during those years sometimes, but I had a pretty awesome life overall, things that I never could have imagined.
Well, and just like anything on the internet, there's always going to be someone that's going to pass judgment. I mean, you could be feeding starving babies and puppies, and someone is going to say that you're somehow doing them wrong by them not learning to work for themselves. You know, the internet. The internet is a terrible, terrible place. But you know, it's like, how would that be not a good friend? I mean, inherently, there's nothing wrong with anything that you did. I mean, as long as you're doing it by your own volition and not being forced to do it, that's your life. You can do whatever you want.
100%. And we went in, she's like, you don't have to do anything. We can just look and have fun. Like, it'll be fun. She's like, have an open mind. I was like, okay. And she told the manager and he talked to me and I was like, I could never do this. And then I sat back at the bar and shortly after 3 girls came and they were talking to me a little bit and then they grabbed me and they dragged me to the dressing room and they stripped my clothes and I don't know whose hot pink bikini it was, but they're like, she can wear this one, somebody said. And they put it on me and they pushed me on the stage through the door. And I was like, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it. I was on the stage at the strip club. But I was like, whatever, I'm here. I'll make the most of it. And I walked to the pole and I tried to move like I saw the girls moving, but I'm sure I wasn't graceful. But it was scary and crazy and super emotional. And overall, I felt really empowered.
Yep.
Like I never felt that feeling ever before. It was like this fire. Like I didn't know that this thing was inside of me that came alive. And afterwards, I had $55. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. And everyone was clapping and cheering. And it was super fun. And even though I was super shy, I felt like a different person when I was on stage. After I got off stage, I was like, I have to talk to the manager. And I went and told him, I'm like, I think I can work here after all. And he's like, you can start tonight if you want. But I went back the next night and I was a dancer total of 20 years.
Wow. So just from that one experience, you're like, you know what? This is going to work for me. That's pretty amazing, really. I mean, because I had no idea what to expect and how you got from point A to B. I certainly didn't expect, I thought maybe it would have been a more gradual, but when something unlocks in your brain and you're like, I enjoy this, it's pretty amazing what's the word I'm looking for? How powerful you can become and take control over so much of it. It's really, really amazing. So now, not to get too far in the weeds about it, but I'm sure people are curious. So, you get the pink bikini. Is this a bikini dancing place, or did the bikini eventually not be a bikini anymore?
It was a completely nude place. So the first song they told me as they were doing, I don't even know how I remembered any of it, honestly, because there was such adrenaline happening. But they were like, on the first song, you have to take off your top. And I had seen them do that. And on the second song, they said I had to go naked.
Right.
And at the time, it seemed like there was absolutely no possibility that I could do that because I'm like I was super rebellious, but super shy as a little Amish girl.
Sure.
And even after I left, I was super shy and taught that we cover our bodies. Like I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but we don't go become naked on a stage in front of people.
Right.
But I danced there for 4 months. And even though this thing would come alive inside of me when I would go on stage and I felt super empowered. It took me a long time to get used to it, even though I loved it. And it was like this thing unlocked that I wanted to feel when I was Amish, but it never happened. And then all of a sudden, here I am and this power and empowering feeling. And I could own my sexuality, which I was taught to hide and not have really. And my long blonde hair, even the first time I went on stage, for some reason, when I took the pole and it fell and I was kind of down, my hair fell in front of my face. And at that moment, I felt like no one could see me.
Right.
I know they could, but in my head, that was my shield, my hair. Sure. And even throughout my 20 years of dancing, my hair was always long and always my shield, my power shield. Right. I don't know. It was pretty cool.
Well, and I mean, there really cannot be. I mean, if you want to feel free and you want to strike out for the freedom as opposed to the very restrictive culture of being Amish, it's really hard to be any more free than being naked. I mean, really, that's about as free as you can be. Feeling things you didn't feel before. It is simple as the air conditioning on parts of your body that you would have never felt it before. So, I mean, it definitely makes sense. I mean, there's a lot of logic to it, and there's certainly a lot of logic to what you're saying about your hair. Because if you can rationalize that it's a more subtle change, it makes change a little bit easier. So that makes sense too. So now, how did this affect your personal life?
That was very tricky, actually, because there was this newfound freedom and excitement and empowering feeling. I wanted just to tell everyone, oh my gosh, I'm a stripper. It's so fun. Everyone should be a stripper. It's so amazing. You can go and do pole tricks. I always felt like I was flying. I learned how to do pole tricks after 4 months, I moved back to Grand Rapids, and the girls there did a lot of pole tricks, and that was not a nude club, but it made me feel like I was flying free, and I just wanted to tell the world. But I quickly realized that people would judge me, and they were didn't think it was cool. So that excitement of wanting to tell the world or how awesome being a stripper was very short-lived as far as being open about it. So because I felt like people judged me so much, I just stopped telling people that I was a dancer unless someone knew me really well. And I would just tell people I was a waitress or a bartender because it was easier for me to lie than accept the judgment I was feeling.
Sure.
And I know that was not right to lie to people. And actually, because I was writing a book, took me a long time to release it because I was so scared of judgment. But it was the most freeing feeling after I did release my book, because just because I'm a dancer doesn't make me a bad person.
No. Yeah. Yeah. And it's, and the nice thing about writing the book is it makes you an advocate too, to advocating for look, even sexuality, any kind of sexuality, sex workers, anything, as long as they're doing it by choice, that's the big defining factor. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being an escort or working at any of the the bunny ranch or whatever in Vegas if you're there because it's what you like to do and that you enjoy it. You know, it's very different than being human trafficked. Like those are two
100%.
very different things. And I think, unfortunately, too many people think they're one and the same, that everybody who dances or everyone who enjoys sex must be somewhat damaged, which frankly does not have to be the case. And so by you writing your book and sharing your story, you're advocating for people that maybe aren't comfortable advocating for themselves. So you should be commended for that. I think that's very important that you've told your story. And we're not done yet. I'm not letting you off that easy. So we're still going to talk about your story. And also it's kind of a sidebar. I only just recently learned that the pole moves. I just always thought it was the dancer. I didn't know that the pole also moves. How would I know? How would I know?
I know. Why would you know?
I had no idea.
When I first started dancing, the poles did not move.
Oh.
And so I was used to a pole that didn't move. And in Vegas, when I ended up in Vegas, when I lived there for 6.5 years. And even there at first, the poles were not spinning. And when I first started dancing on the spinning poles, it was really scary. I would feel like I'm going to fly off.
Sure.
Because I was used to using my body and doing all the flips and the spins and stuff.
Right.
And eventually, after I got used to it, I had to learn to slow down and let the pole do a lot of the work.
Right.
And all I had to do was lift and do different things. I didn't have to do all the motions anymore, because if I did, there were a couple times I was like, I can't stop myself. I'm upside down. I'm spinning and I'm going faster and faster and I get dizzy. And I was like, how am I going to get out of this? But thankfully, I was somehow stopped myself.
Yay,
so
physics.
It was a learning. I know. I was like, I had to figure out how to, use my body to slow me down and not just make it go faster.
Right. How did you end up from Grand Rapids then? Was it from Grand Rapids to Vegas, or was there a stop in between?
There was, I was in Grand Rapids for around 4 years. So once I moved to Grand Rapids in, was it 2020? 2020, yes, in 2020, beginning of 2020. And when I was 21, I started going to college. I wanted to be an accountant because I love math and numbers. And once I was in college, I was single and I started hanging out with the wrong crowd. It was actually not the people from the college. It just happened. I just happened to be going in college. It was a guy I met at Sensations in Grand Rapids, and we did coke.
Sure.
And then I also was dating a guy that did coke, and it was just bad. It just one thing led to another. I wasn't with the guy very long, but then I met another guy and I had the biggest crush on him. And I don't know, we were always hanging out and doing coke like on Wednesdays and on the weekends. And eventually it was almost every day. And then one night there was no coke. And I was like, let's go look at the hookers on that I heard. I always heard that there's hookers on Division Street. I was like, I don't want to pick one up. I just want to see where they are.
Right.
And he's like, great, we could probably find coke down there. And then I was like, I'm scared, like, because it's the middle of the night. And I'm like, we probably shouldn't go. And he's like, oh, come on, you're the one that wanted to go. So we go, and this swarm of people like flocked in front of my truck. And I was like, oh my gosh, we have to get out of here. He's like, calm down. And one of the women, she's like walking alongside and she's like, roll your window down. So he rolled it down a little bit. He asked her if she had anything. And she's like, sure, but you can get in the truck, but you have to tell everyone else to get away from the truck because she's scared. So they all go back up and she gets in the truck and she's like, I have crack. And I never heard of crack.
Right.
But he did. And we go, she's like, we can go back to she was living at a weekly motel in Grand Rapids. She's like, my husband's at work, but we can go back there. And she pulls this pipe out of her little nightstand. I'm like, what's that for? And she smacks my friend across the face. And she's like, what? She's never done this? He's like, no, but she's a big girl. She chooses what she does with her life. And I was like, if he can do it, I can do it. And she's like, I don't want this young girl's life to be ruined. She's like, please don't do that. Don't let her do it. And he's saying she's her own person. She can do what she wants. And I was mad at her. I'm like, why can't I do it? He's doing it. And eventually they let me do it. And man, that was like the beginning of the end of my life as I knew it.
Right.
It was it just took a hold of me. And I got so addicted. I stopped going to work. I stopped going to college, and I literally lost almost everything. I lost my apartment, all my belongings, and I didn't have a place to live. I was selling myself so I could have a hotel and so I could support my crack habit and have food to eat sometimes. And I don't know, I just went down this downhill spiral, and I often thought of my Amish family. And I truly believe that my Amish background and all the values and things that I learned from being Amish gave me the strength somehow to get out of it, because I didn't want to smoke crack, but every time I go to bed, I'd be like, I'm not doing it the next time when I wake up, I'm not doing it. But that's all I could think of was to smoke crack or to go get my next fix. And one of my clients, he was an older man that I would see sometimes. And after Rowan and Dan and I, there was Rowan and Dan, their names in my book. And the three of us, we finally got an apartment because I was like, maybe if I have a place to live, I can get past it. But after a while, we smoked crack there too. It was awful. But this guy, he invited me to go to Vegas. And I was like, I don't have any money to go. He's like, come on, it's on me. Let's go. And when I was there, we were there for 2 weeks. I didn't want to smoke crack. I was like, wow, I'm a new person. I'm excited. I'm never going to do that again. And as soon as we were on our way to the airport and I thought of Rowan and Dan, that feeling came back in my stomach. And that's when I realized that I needed to get away from the people I was hanging out with and associating with if I ever wanted to not be a drug addict. And this guy took me to Vegas a few more times every couple months. And I ended up meeting Lance in my book. And that's his name in my book. And he had a troubling past too. So we were both just getting back on our feet. And I asked him if I could move in with him. And he was like, sure. And I moved to Vegas and I danced there for 6.5 years.
You don't very often hear a story of Vegas healing someone.
I know.
You know?
I mean, there were lots. I know, right? I needed to get away from Rowan and Dan, and I was sad to leave them, but I didn't want to be a drug addict like that anymore.
Right.
And I wanted my life to be back together.
So it's just the simple change of environment. Did you ever struggle when you were in Vegas? Did you relapse? Did you go back to anything?
Not with crack, but I did do coke a few times. And my boyfriend, he started doing meth. And I did meth a couple times. Like we went on the way to Burning Man. He's like, we have to do meth. Like this is the greatest thing ever. And after we got back from Burning Man, I was so scared that I was going to go down the road that I just came from. Mm-hmm. And I told him, I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I was like, you can go on your way and live your life, but I'm not going to be there. And he stopped. But then we started, he was convinced that he needed to have 2 girlfriends. And I didn't want to do that. But I don't know. It was just a weird situation. But he'd be like, we have to do ecstasy to go to the nightclub it's easier for him to talk to people so we can pick up another girl.
Sure.
That kind of backfired on him because, I don't know, it was weird. Eventually we did find a girl to go home with us, but it was super strange and awkward.
Yeah.
But I was pretty addicted to ecstasy when I was there for a while. But that wasn't like, nothing like coke. Like It was really fun. I would go to work and do ecstasy.
Right.
It was pretty funny. It was pretty fun, actually. And so I struggled with that for a little bit, but not for very long. And that boyfriend, he was very abusive. He actually tried to kill me one time, and it was really bad. I'm grateful that I'm here. I'm lucky that I'm here today to tell my story because he really tried to end my life. And I somehow still went back to him, and I was with him for 2 years after that because he was very manipulative and narcissistic and had me brainwashed. It was awful. And I was, like I said, there for 6.5 years, and I broke up with him, and I was single for like 6 months. And then I started dating a guy in California that I had met a couple years prior to that. And I moved to LA in the end of 2011. And I commuted back and forth to Vegas for a little bit too. I would go for like a little while for 4 days, sometimes a week, every couple of weeks. And I got sick of that. Then I decided I didn't want to be a dancer. And I went to college for 1 year and I got my phlebotomy, X-ray technician, and medical assistant license all in 1 year. And I was a phlebotomist.
Wow.
For 3 years, I was a phlebotomist and I made $11 an hour in LA. And that was so disappointing.
Yeah.
I know. I had no idea when I signed up for the program because they won't tell us how much they make.
Right.
And I had to pay back my student loans and I had a car payment at the time. So I couldn't support myself on $11 an hour. So every 3 months or so, I would go on the weekends and I would just see as many clients as I could in 2 days. A couple times I saw 14 guys. I did have clients. I didn't just dance in Vegas. I was an escort as well. And I saw 14 guys in 2 days sometimes. And I would make as much money as I could so I could support myself in LA. And that was really, really hard as well.
So was being an escort a thing of necessity, or were there parts of it that you enjoyed?
I actually enjoyed a lot of it. To me, it was more fun than giving lap dances. I loved the part of going on stage, but lap dances, I did enjoy it a majority of the time, but being an escort, I don't know, it was just quicker and easier and like, I don't know, it was fun. It was a great big adventure. It was a lot of adrenaline.
Yeah.
I don't know, I used to be a super adrenaline junkie for some reason, and that was definitely a lot of adrenaline, especially at first when the clients were new. It was so scary. Like I didn't know who they were, if they were going to hurt me, and that was terrifying sometimes. But thankfully, nothing ever happened. Nothing bad.
And it wasn't just adrenaline. It was also dopamine, which it goes to all the same receptors as the drugs do, right? So it totally makes sense that
it's like
with an addictive personality that you would get a rush from that. It makes perfect sense.
I was addicted to that as well. Yeah. Like it was because it was like, I don't know, I could just go and see them and I didn't have to go to the club, and it was pretty cool.
Right.
I know it was illegal.
Was the addiction to the fact that it was illegal and exciting, or was the addiction actually to the physical act of being with them?
It was more the physical act of being with them and the money. Yeah. It was like more addicted to the money and the physical act of being with them.
So did that, do you feel like, and I think we're talking about the same thing. I was talking about the sex with the clients. So
yeah.
So did you find that it affected your ability to have and I'm using air quotes, which I don't like to use, but a normal relationship then, because you were chasing that dragon of dopamine with the clients, or were you able to keep those things separate?
It definitely affected my relationships because the guy in Vegas that I dated, he was very abusive. And I know I was one of the dancers that had a boyfriend that didn't have a job. He would get a really good job and then he would just get fired or find any reason he could to quit. And then I was stuck supporting him. And finally, I was just so fed up. I'm like, if I have to support him, I'm going to do what I have to do to pay my bills and to pay his bills. And I didn't tell him I was doing that because I knew he probably knew somehow, but I never told him. And I was scared of what he would do if I told him. So I always felt guilty. So I'm sure that affected our relationship a lot because I wasn't honest with him. And then when I started dating the guy in California, I wanted to tell him so bad. And I knew that I should have told him when we started dating. But I didn't plan. I thought once I went to California that then I went to school, my dancing life and the escorting life was all behind me. But that dream of not doing that quickly changed after I got out of college and only made $11 an hour. So I never told him that I was an escort. He knew I was a dancer, and that absolutely affected our relationship because if you're not honest in a relationship, there's no trust, the communication's not open and honest. Like it just absolutely affects your relationship.
Did it also affect your ability to have a physical relationship with a significant other because there wasn't the danger and the excitement? as much?
Oh, no, I still had a very sexual relationship with my boyfriend in California. And he was also not honest with me. He was like a sex addict, and he had many girlfriends, and I tolerated it because of what I was doing.
Right.
And it was a very unhealthy relationship. And he always joked, "Oh, I never had a girlfriend for a year before I met you." And I was like, "Oh, I am tough. I can handle this." And I should have just not. I don't know why I liked him so much. I don't know why. We both liked each other so much.
Right.
But I don't know. It just, looking back, I shouldn't have stayed there for that long. And then my current partner, my fiance, he actually worked with my boyfriend in California. Okay. And we had wild parties, my ex and I, in California. My partner always says that he was a sex cult leader because we had lots of sex parties, and it was pretty wild. Like, we did have lots of sex parties. And I always told him that when I first met him, I told him I did not want to be in a polygamous relationship. Or polyamorous relationship. Sure. I wanted just to be monogamous. And he didn't say anything, but I know he hurt me. Before I knew it, sure, I like to flirt with girls. But that was about as far as I wanted to take it. I was like, I want a different relationship. I want it just to be a normal relationship. But he just kept pushing it and pushing it. And we started going to these sex parties, underground sex parties. And I don't know, it was very challenging and fun at the same time. And I did a lot of Molly and ecstasy in California as well. That was like the only way I could deal with my life that I was living. It was very challenging. And I met my current partner at a desert party. We were celebrating a friend's birthday, and it was the Throne of Pinnacles in California. I don't know if you heard of them, but it's a cool place. It's kind of alien-like. It's pretty cool. And one morning, we're up and we're already partying. This truck comes blazing in, and I'm like, "Oh no, the cops are here to shut us down, or the Rangers," because this would happen sometimes. And I went and told my ex, he was still my boyfriend, and he was playing music, and he's like, "Oh, that's just my coworker." And I was like, "Why would you invite your coworker to our crazy parties? Like, we get naked. Like, you should never mix your work with this stuff."
Right.
Like, I was really upset. But this guy, Waylon, I'll call him Waylon, my partner, because that's his name in the book. He was so cool. Like, I don't know. I was really shy around him, but we quickly became fast friends. And the three of us, we would go out, and I finally had a friend to talk to when my ex when Blake would go and flirt with other girls and dance with other girls. I was finally not alone. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I could be honest with someone. Like, I could tell Waylon anything and everything, and he wouldn't judge me or think any different of me. He was really awesome, and we were just super close, but it was never sexual. I didn't think I was attracted to him that sexually or physically like that. And one night there was a party at the park, and the three of us went back to our house, and we were playing music, and Blake was like, "Have sex with my girlfriend." And Waylon was like, "No, she's your girlfriend." And I was like, "I don't want to have sex with him. He's like kind of like my brother. I don't know. He's like my really good friend. I don't want to have sex with him." And Blake just wouldn't stop. And he eventually, he unzipped his pants and made me have sex with Waylon. And after that, I was like, "Oh, that was pretty awesome, actually. I really did enjoy that." And I was like, maybe this is something I want to pursue. And I did. And we cheated on Blake a couple times. And Waylon is so honest and awesome. He's like, "We have to tell Blake, like, we can't do this." And we were celebrating my 20-year anniversary of running away from Amish land. And I gave Waylon a little bit of Molly. And he's like, "We have to tell him." I'm like, "Okay, that's fine, but not right now. It's like 4 a.m. and the people are still dancing and partying." And he's like, "Okay." And Blake was in the bedroom having sex with a porn star. And when he came out, Waylon was like, "We're having an affair." And I was like, "Oh my God, what? Why?" He just blurted it out. And Blake was like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's true. We're having an affair." And it was a very challenging time. But I was I was mad at Waylon at the time because he did that. But at the same time, I was glad because I was just tired of everything in California the way it was, and something had to give and something had to change.
It had to
And
been
Waylon-
exhausting. It had to just been exhausting.
It was unbelievably exhausting.
Yeah.
Like, it was overwhelming and exhausting. I was just trying to keep up, and I was trying to keep Blake satisfied sexually, so he wouldn't just keep running off with these other girls. And it seemed the more I did, the more he wanted. Like, it was just wild how it just was never, I felt like I was never enough.
Right.
And Waylon and I decided to, even though Blake was very upset, he forgave us now. And I don't talk to him, but Waylon and Blake talk because they were really good friends back then, and they're really good friends again. But Waylon and I decided to leave California, and we went back to Phoenix. And we've been together, it was 7 years in August, and we have a daughter together. She's 3, and life is pretty awesome. We're in the process of selling 2 of our acres in Arizona, and we'll still have 2 acres. And then we just bought a place here in Michigan.
That's great.
So
that's
life is pretty awesome. Finally.
Like yeah. Like I like in, people can't see you because like this isn't, I mean, we'll use some clips and stuff, but to watch your face light up during that last 3 sentences where you're talking about how, that you found a place, you found your person, and you have a daughter. Like it was, I don't know if you were watching yourself, but it was pretty magical to see. Like you immediately started to glow. So I'm very happy for you that you have that. That's pretty amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I finally found, it took me a long time to find the freedom and peace and the happiness that I went searching for when I left the Amish. But I finally have that. Like, I finally am living a peaceful, happy, sober life. Like, I don't know. I don't even drink alcohol now. And I don't have anything against anyone that does. It just makes me very ill. Even if I take a little sip, it makes me feel sick. So I just don't even do it. And why? Life is good.
Yeah. And you experienced what you needed to experience, clearly.
Yeah. To get to where I am today. So
tell me, you made mention when we first started talking today about your family and that you had spoken to your mom. She had written you letters. What is your relationship like with your family, and how did it get to the point that it is now?
So I have a pretty decent relationship with my family now, especially here in Michigan. I have a really, really awesome relationship with them, with my sister and my 3 brothers, and they are very accepting of my partner. And my family in Iowa, however, is my mom and dad. I have a good relationship with them. Not my dad so much. We have found a common understanding. We respect each other and each other's boundaries.
Right.
I don't expect them to change. Even my mom, like, they are who they are, and that's amazing. But it took a lot of me being patient and respecting them. After I left, I was very rebellious, and I was like, oh, I'm not going to do what they want me to do. I can do what I want. I'm not living there. But once I started to respect them, and realizing this is their life, this is how they've always lived, and I'm the one that changed. I can't expect them to change. Why would I? I shouldn't, because I'm the one that decides to not be like them. Once I started doing that, over time, we have built a good relationship, especially with my mom. Now, I go visit them every summer, and they just love and adore our daughter. Like, they just absolutely love her. However, my parents, unfortunately, do not accept my partner. So I respect them, and I don't bring him there anymore, just because it's more discomfort than it's worth, honestly.
What is the reasoning that they don't accept him?
My mom says that it just makes her nervous. She says they know that he's a wonderful guy, and they're really happy for me. But it's just, she just doesn't like that he's not an Amish guy, and that I'm not Amish, and that I'm not married to an Amish guy. Mm-hmm. Like, it just makes her feel uncomfortable. And I'm like, if that's how it's going to be, that's fine. It's your life. I'm grateful that I get to bring my daughter, and that I still get to come visit. It is interesting because even though I consider myself to have a good relationship with her, and I love to go visit, I just got a letter from her, and she says that she's happy that I bought a place here in Michigan, but she's concerned that I'm spending too much time with my Amish siblings and that I am influencing the kids and I'm going to take them away from the Amish. And also, if she's okay with me coming to visit in Iowa, but she would like it if I cut my trips shorter.
Oh.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I can't imagine telling my daughter, like, don't come visit me for this long, for a week or 9 days. Like, oh my goodness, that's too long once a year.
Like, she's afraid it's contagious.
Yeah, she's afraid I'm going to take the kids away. And I'm like, I am not, like, I would never try to influence them to come and not be Amish. Like, that's not who I am. And I would never do that. Have
any of your other siblings left the Amish community?
I have one of my second to the youngest brother. He got married when he was Amish, and they have had 4 kids and had another one after they left. They left, I think, around 3 or 4 years ago. Okay. They left as a family. And then I have Miriam, 2 nieces that left and 3 nephews that left.
Now, do they, you had said that mom thinks that you're influencing. Do they point to you to say that your experiences influence them to leave, or is it just a separate thing to them?
They don't point their finger at me because I haven't. They, thank goodness, I would if I could, or I don't know. It would be hard because I know my family would be very upset if I would take them in, but I would take them in rather than letting them live on the street.
Sure.
So I think they are not directly pointing the finger at me because I'm not helping them.
Right.
And I mean, I talk to them and stuff, and I'm very supportive. I'm a phone call away, but none of them are living at my place, or I'm not just handing them out money or anything like that. Like, they're running away and they're starting their own life. It's not my fault. It's not because of me, and I'm here for them. So I think that they realize that I'm not influencing, like, it's not because of me. And I tell them, my sister was trying to argue with me when I was there this summer. She's like, I was going to tell you that you can't come here because your nieces and nephews are leaving. And it was just this whole big thing. And I'm like, that is not my fault. Like, it is not my fault. Like, I don't hardly even know them because I come once a year and they're always busy working when I'm here. Right. Like, I don't even really know them. So it's definitely not my fault.
How much do your parents know about your life while you were gone?
I have never talked to them about my dancing years or my escorting or any of that stuff. I've talked a tiny bit about my addiction, more to my brothers and sisters than my parents, but I don't know what they know. But it would be naive to think that they don't know, because the Amish, they know pretty much everything. Like, they really do know everything. And this summer when I was there, the last day I was there, my mom came out. I was talking to my dad in the buggy shop, and she's like, she also mentioned maybe I shouldn't be here this long because some of my brothers and sisters aren't comfortable having me here this long. And I was like, yeah, my sister was telling me that I wasn't going to be welcome because of my book. And she said that my sister was furious. She thought I wrote about her teenage years. And I was like, I did, but I cut it all out. Like, there's not, you don't have to worry. So she was a little relaxed after that. And I told my mom what my sister said. And she's like, I know about your book and I'm happy for you, but I have no desire to go searching for it or reading it. And I was like, thank you. Like, thank you. I don't need my mom to read all that.
Right.
Right. It would be kind of awkward, I feel like.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, even if your mom was English, it would be an awkward reveal. But the challenges of her hearing the whole story, I think, would be tough. Just because of, she doesn't have experience with the things that you were going through, so that's a pretty tough. That'd be a lot all at once, I think. But
right. And I don't think they would understand like the things or why. And I don't even understand all of the things, but I do know that writing my book, it was very therapeutic and it helped me on a healing journey. And I never realized when I started writing it because I wanted to share my story to give hope and to inspire others that may have gone through similar things that I have. But it was super therapeutic and healing to write about all the traumas and the things I just kept shoving down.
Now, I'm a huge proponent of mental health treatment and therapy. So I always try to, just the last show we did, I had a bar owner on, and we talked a lot because he was a Marine Corps veteran. And we talked a lot about how important therapy is. Is therapy something that you've taken advantage of? Or did you just let your book?
I have not. My book, and I just try to have like, I don't know, self-healing experiences. I try to live a healthy lifestyle, and exercising, sometimes it really helps me.
Oh, absolutely.
Just going for walks.
That's that dopamine again.
Yes. I have to like do these things to keep my head right. And music is a huge healer as well. It really helps me.
What are you listening to now?
I listen to a lot of things, but in the car now I listen to toddler tunes, kids songs. But I never thought I would be listening to toddler tunes or kids songs. But I love like all kinds of music. I really like drum and bass, and even like deep forest, and more like meditating music, a lot of meditating music, and closey, and all different kinds of music now.
Sure.
I still love country. I even rap, rock and roll, literally like every genre. When I was in California, that was one of the things that kept me there so long. I think my ex was a DJ and a music producer, and we went to a lot of underground parties and with music, and it was really amazing. All the music and all the artists I saw out there.
Yeah. And you would have been exposed to a lot more out there. I mean, there's so much stuff going on. There's always something going on.
Yeah.
I mean, you have lived a dozen lifetimes. You know, you've had so many experiences, and it's very inspiring in that there are admittedly some things that were not good and were not healthy, but that you've taken those things and learned from them and used them to write a book that could definitely benefit a lot of people. And hopefully they get out to see it and read it and order it, because I think just from the conversation we've had, I think that your story it's important. And did you write the whole thing yourself, or did you have help?
So I wrote all of it except some of this erotic scenes. My editor wrote some of them, but other than that, I wrote all of it. And so I had these friends in Vegas, a couple that have published and written, I don't know, quite a few books themselves. And when I met them and they heard my story and I told them I wanted to write a book, and I found out they were like, we'll help you. So they helped me through the process, and they kept telling me, just keep writing, like don't stop. And I had over 300,000 words and over 500 pages.
Wow.
And I was like, I think I'm done. Like, I don't want to just keep writing. Like, this is going to be like the book of all books. And I was like, I need to have an editor. And they were like, you can do it yourself. I was like, there's no way I can edit this myself. Like, there's no way. And then one of my cousins, she's the author of Behind Blue Curtains. It's an amazing book. It's also a true story, but it's about, it's a sex crime book. She was like molested and taken advantage of. Anyway, I don't know if she had published her book yet, or she was in the process of doing it. So I was like, I called her and I'm like, do you have an editor? And she's like, yes. And thankfully, this lady, she took me on. Maeve is her name. She was an amazing editor. She was really awesome to work with. And that was in 2020 when I was pregnant with my daughter. I started going through the editing process, and she was really awesome. And I'm really grateful that she helped me get the book to where it is.
Well, and the only reason I asked was because you tell the story so vividly and well that I didn't have any trouble as we're talking following along with what was happening, so I kind of figured you probably wrote most of it yourself because you're so good at telling the story.
Thank you. Yeah, I wrote all except a few of the erotic scenes. I was like, help me out. I'm creative, but I can't, I don't know. And I wanted to get it done. So
was it because you wanted them to be steamier, or was it just that you were too close to it to write them that way?
Some of them I felt like they just, I don't know. I wanted them to be steamier, and it was also a little uncomfortable on some of them just because, I don't know. I needed a little help with them.
Sure. Sure.
because I wasn't comfortable with all of them. But writing them, I felt like, I don't know, I just wanted to have her help. She wanted to do all of them. I was like, no, it's my story. Like, I want to write some of these.
Right.
Like, and she's like, that's fine.
You're like, I was there for some of them.
Yes. I was there for all of them, but she put us, and you know what I did in all of them, actually, I started writing them and she like filled some of the things in, because I was like, just please put it like the spin on it and make it, because it's a book, make it good.
Right.
And she did. But you know what, I'm actually thinking of doing a book without the erotic scenes, because the erotic scenes are a lot for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like, it's too much. And I think that that a lot of people would enjoy the book better if it wasn't so steamy, because the reviews are, it's porn. It's too much sex scenes. So I think if I make a book that doesn't have all of that, that way people can choose if they want the erotic part or not the erotic part.
Right. And maybe people that aren't really paying attention to the story might feel like it's leaning too far into the erotic part, and then they're not paying attention to your message, which, I mean,
right.
The conversation we've been having, your message is very clear to me. And I definitely hear you when you talk about empowerment and basically coming out the other side of something that was very challenging and it could have potentially broken you as a person, and you used it to become stronger, and now you have a great family life and an adorable daughter and baby shark in your car when you drive around.
Yes, exactly. Life is good. Exactly.
It really is.
Pretty awesome.
I'm so happy for you, and thank you so much for coming on the show, Naomi. I'm honored to meet you and have this chat, because it's been fulfilling for me. I've enjoyed talking to you, and I think people are really going to enjoy your story.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. It's been really fun and an honor. And I'm grateful that you've had me, and it was amazing.
Absolutely. It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much. Please go get yourself a copy of Naomi Swartzentruber's book, The Amazing Adventures of an Amish Stripper, available wherever you get your books. I know for a fact it's available on Amazon. So please go out and grab yourself a copy. Support her, support the message of empowerment that she's got going on, and just support a really awesome person. Thank you, as always, for listening. Love you. If you've enjoyed Those Who Do podcast, please, please, please don't forget to leave a review and subscribe. Thank you.
Tony Forsmark.
Multispective is a podcast where we interview individuals around the world with unique stories and experiences. Guests share in detail some of the traumas they faced.
Because I feel in some ways so disgusting and broken on the inside, I'm going to work on my outside, and that's going to make me feel better.
Mental health issues they've lived with.
I was very hyper, like I felt good. That's one thing of mania, like you feel good.
Decisions they've made.
My life changed drastically in that moment. That one moment, I can't even begin to describe to people how hard, how good, how scary, how disturbing and emotional that moment was, smoking crack.
And more importantly, how they found strength, resilience, and healing.
Just being able to think and have conversations and walk places, that really helped me accelerate the process of, rebuilding burnt bridges.
Tune in, subscribe, rate, and review Multispective on www.multispective.org or your preferred podcasting app. You can also find us on any of the social media platforms that you use. Your feedback is always welcome. Lots of love, Multispective.